Last time you were here, you mentioned that you were maybe thinking about going to Hoover for the SEC tournament. It's now tournament time, and you say you are going to go.
Yeah, so me and my brother are gonna go down. It's always been me and V had talked about Omaha and Hoover and our experiences, and I mean our experiences at Hoover have always been unbelievable. From when we made it to the championship in 21, seeing a unbelievable flyover to winning the thing in 22. I want to kind of go and support and be a fan.
The last time that Tennessee went to Hoover as the number one seed was in 2022. This is now the second time they're the number one seed, and it was when you were the pitcher, the relief pitcher. You tossed the final out, I believe, in that game, correct, to win it for Tennessee. Talk to me about that final inning where you're getting that last out to win it all for Tennessee.
And it's a feeling of accomplishment, just in terms of from my first year there not making the tournament to my second year there not making the tournament to being put out in the first round to just almost winning it the next year. And I always tell people my favorite baseball moment ever is in that championship game is we turn around after celebrating, me, Luke, and Russell run into each other, and two other guys who I have the most respect ever for kind of went through the ringer, went through the grind, and it was a feeling of, hey, we made it, we did it, this is awesome. And yeah, it's an unbelievable feeling.
Yeah, I remember getting some footage of you after the game, and you have, the SEC championship signed. You actually go to Greg Sankey to get the trophy, and you let loose in a way that we don't really see because you're the ultimate professional on the field. So for you to be able to really embrace that moment of winning the SEC championship, what was that relief and excitement like for you?
Man, it's a great feeling because that week is such a grind. People don't realize that. And I got to give a shout out to Beth Schwartz, who is the nutritionist, and she's the MVP during that week, from making sure we're fed right to hydrated. People don't realize how hot it is on that field. And it's especially if you're one of the teams, if you go down on Tuesday, we're fortunate enough to start on Wednesday, but you play every day, you're sleeping in a hotel every night, you're practicing on fields that you're not used to. And that whole week to get through and win a championship is the ultimate feeling of success after the ringer of a week that you had.
And when we looked to Hoover, we always knew once the schedule was released that they would play the winner of Vanderbilt and Florida. They're both kind of sneaky teams in a way. I mean, we can credit Vanderbilt for giving Kentucky a hard time, so Tennessee can share part of the regular season title. They defeated Florida in their game on Tuesday, so maybe what's the challenge about facing a Vanderbilt team again that kind of gave Tennessee a few fits when they met in Nashville a few weeks ago?
Yeah, it's one of those teams. Vandy always has success in the SEC tournament, and Corbs is a great coach, and he's done great over there. I think the key is to, especially in a ballpark they're playing in, the ball doesn't fly like it does at Lindsey Nelson or it does in Nashville. But just when you're at bats, it's one of those games. I think pitching is very limited throughout the tournament. You play a lot of games in a short amount of time, so being able to work at bats, being able to get on base is the keys. And it's one of those things. It's like it's pretty obvious, but at the same time, it's like the quicker you can get into a bullpen, the quicker you can get a starter out, the more success you'll have.
When you look at that pitching staff, where does your confidence mostly lie within that group?
I think it's in its flexibility. I think you've seen the last couple of weeks guys push past their limits a little bit. I think you watch Aaron Combs start to kind of show up to be the guy that we expect him to be. Nate Snead's been great all year. All three of your starters have given you quality innings. You've got guys in the back like Andrew Binke and Kirby Cannell who just get outs in the middle of it. And then the best part is you get A.J. Russell coming back, and it probably won't be in the capacity people think, but you get a guy who is a potential first rounder and one of the best arms I've seen since I've been there, coming out to get 3 outs in the middle of a game. That sounds pretty nice to me.
Yeah, I mean, Tony says that he's in the bullpen, he's getting in work, so he's all but ready to go. What's the challenge for that kind of a pitcher who has missed most of the year for an injury but could come in for those clutch 3 outs you mentioned?
I think it's just getting back into your routine. I think for him, he's been in the training room. He's been building up, long tossing, throwing bullpens, maybe some live ABs here and there. Just getting back into that game action. There's a big difference in bullpen throwing and that game action, especially on your body and your arm. And just more than anything, getting them ready for the regionals, super regionals. I know just talking to those guys, everybody wants to go down and win Hoover, but just looking back on teams of the past, the main goal is win a national championship. I mean, it's great to do both, but just getting him some innings, getting him some action, and getting him built up to, hey, get us 3 important outs in a regional, 3 important outs in a super regional, and get us back to Omaha.
When you look at Drew Beam, maybe what are we hoping to see from him this weekend? I know recently he's talked maybe about finding his control and confidence again. What do you see watching him compete?
I think that's just it. Just watch him go out and be the competitor he is. I think for him, when you look at what he's done throughout his career, it's in big games, big situations. He's kind of stepped up. He's pushed his game a little bit more and more every year. And I think it's one of those things that's going to be the hardest year for him because he has done it so much and he can probably relax a little bit. But just to know that he's a leader on this team and for us to have success, it starts with him.
I know the last time we were here, I did ask you about like the emotional maturity of the team. Well, funny enough, I guess it was Drew Gilbert talking to Tony, and he said, wow, this team's like really mature. So to hear from a character and personality like Drew Gilbert, to notice how mature this team is that a credit to the amount of veterans on this team that have this type of experience? Like you mentioned, the 2022 team getting the SEC tournament. Like, what's the correlation from having experience and having the veterans on this team to make them mature?
Yeah, and talking about Gilbert, it's funny V says that, but that guy's one of the more mature approaches to baseball I've ever. Having to talk to him through at bats, talk to him like, hey, if I was pitching you, what would you do? And that's what I've kind of seen with this team is you still get guys like Blake Burke and Kirby and who aren't mature off the field. They're very immature, but you watch how. And I kind of what I talked about last time, their approach as they go through it. Blake Burke with the crazy hitting streak in the middle of the year, being able to work to all parts of the field. Christian Moore just being unconscious for half the year. And same thing, being able to drive balls out over center field. But that's how it's been top to bottom for them. Cal Stark being able just to do a job when he has to. If it's leaning to a pitch or hitting a flare to right or even hitting a big home run at times. These guys know their roles and they know what they have to do to win. And I think that's the maturity Gilbert's talking about is there's no selfish at-bats. It's all, what can I do to help the team win?
How important is that in a tournament setting?
It's very important because in these, everybody's playing their best baseball. Everybody knows for the most part they're fighting for their lives, especially if you're one of those 9 to 10 to 11 seeds. You're playing for tomorrow, and that's how it is. And when that happens, people always try to hide in their games a little bit. So every at-bat's important, and just doing the small things, being able to move a runner when you have to, hitting the ball to the right side with a guy on third, and just not giving up free bases throughout the game is huge.
You mentioned, Christian Moore being unconscious and then, Blake Burke having his hitting streak. I kind of want to go into your mind as a pitcher, as if you're the opposing pitcher. What is maybe your game plan when you're facing two guys like that are hitting at an unreal level? Like, how much are they on your radar? How much are you maybe switching up your game to get them off their game?
Yeah, it's tough because the great thing about this lineup is there's so much protection through it. From you have Christian Moore batting first, and then Blake Burke followed by Amick and Kavaris and Dreiling. So there's not a point in the lineup that you can really relax. We actually had Max Scherzer come and talk to us when we were playing, and we asked him the same question. When you start facing a guy like that, do you attack guys with their weaknesses? And he's like, no. He's like, for him, he's always trusting his stuff, and my best beats your best. And that's just always, as a pitcher's mentality, you have to have is, I believe I'm good enough to get this guy out. And it's just tough. Sometimes it's the cost of doing business with a guy like Simo or Charlie Condone or Kavaris or Blake Burke up there. It's just, you got to go out there and trust your stuff and see what happens.
From your perspective, how fun is it to watch this team that regardless if it's Cal Stark, the catcher, or your leadoff hitter, and Christian Moore, like, they're almost a certified hit every time they're at the dish?
It's unbelievable, but the part that gets me is just to see where these guys have grown in areas that they were weak in last year. I actually was talking to Cal Stark last weekend and just joking around about how he's almost reckless behind the plate, where he's no fear to throw anywhere, and he's been his greatest strength this year. Blake Burke, who came in as probably one of our worst defensive players to come in, now he's an SEC Defensive Player of the Year. Kavaris Tears playing right field and maturing before my eyes, and it's just one of those things where, back to the maturity of the team and the development of them and the great job the coaching staff has done, it's just remarkable to see that these guys have gotten better in areas that they needed to.
Yeah, it was actually Drew Beam. I think it was maybe game two against South Carolina that he talked about the energy that Cal Stark has behind the plate. It's similar to Evan Russell, who's the catcher before him. And I know they have like that quarterback feel because they're the only position that sees the whole field, right? But what gives him such command in that position that you don't always see that in the catcher spot?
I think the two biggest thing is he's the first guy to have your back in a tough situation. Maybe a guy who does a bat flip on you or maybe something like that. He's the first guy out there. Second, he's just a great person. I think that's huge. That was always big for me. Connor Pavoloni and Evan Russell were great catchers, but they're even better people. So it made it a lot easier to throw to. You wanted to throw to those guys. You knew they had your back, and you knew that they wanted to win. It's the same with Cal. I think as a pitching staff, even talking to some of the guys last year, they loved him off the field, so it was a lot easier to throw to him behind the plate because, first off, he's really talented back there. But then again, it's like you're throwing to your best friend.
Yeah. You also mentioned Blake Burke and the growth that he had at first base. I think he even said himself that he was a horrible, first baseman when he first started and preferred to be in the outfield. As a pitcher, how crucial is that first baseman position for you and securing outs there?
It's huge. I don't think people realize how many defensive runs saved there are over there. You look back to 2022 and watch Luke over there and how many scoops he made or great plays he made and saves you. Well, it saves you a runner, but you don't know what's ever going to happen after that. Like how much the one mistake leads to another, and it's just a funnel effect. And same with Burke this year. I wish there's a clip out there of him in perfect game as a high schooler and playing first base, and it's insane to see the difference of it. He's throwing balls away. He's just fielding, flipping glove out there, and the growth that he's had, and seeing that and being able to be the guy he is now is unbelievable.
How much confidence as a pitcher does that give you heading into the tournament?
Give you a ton, and it's just a credit to the culture that V's built over there, and really that whole staff from Elander to Coach Anderson to Richard. Those guys breathe, eat, sleep baseball, and their whole mentality is we're going to outwork you, and that's how it's been. And you can't get to the point they're at right now without putting in the work and putting in the time, and it's just unbelievable how from my first year to now how that culture is set, and that's just the standard now.
Yeah, and I think recency bias is like such a powerful thing when it's maybe in your advantage. Because Tony said like heading into their last series against South Carolina that he like wanted to challenge a number of his guys, whether it's at the DH spot or guys like Kavares Tears. What is it like when Tony Vitello challenges you guys that way?
I mean, the guy, there's something about him. That's why he's such a great recruiter. People respect everything he does, and there's times where we'll have talks in the locker room or talks out on the field, and it's like you're receiving every single word of it. And he knows when to interject. He knows when to be a certain way. And it's just like he said, he's the hardest working recruiter out there. He puts more hours in. And you see a guy like that being the front for what your culture is supposed to be, it's just easy to follow.
You've watched them all season. What do they need to do to win it all this weekend?
For them, it's just to be themselves and not try to do anything crazy. I know in these big atmospheres, you want to, especially from an at-bat standpoint, you talk about this high-powered offense, hitting a lot of home runs, driving the ball really hard. I think for them, it's just to keep their approach simple. And same thing from the bullpen side of it. I think you're getting some electric arms back in A.J. Russell, and you're getting some guys like Aaron Combs who have stepped up and been really, really good. And just to know that that your stuff is good enough. You don't need to be a different person than you've been all year. I think that's the biggest thing is to know who you are and just stay that way.
Well, hopefully they don't get nervous with you in the stands and they can end up doing a good job in Hoover.
I promise you they won't. I already know Xander and Kirby are at Dave & Buster's right now, so they're not nervous about the whole thing.
I was excited about that.
Oh, my goodness. It's been a 4-year thing for him, so he's probably got enough tickets to make, I don't even know.
Okay, so at least I know. I thought he was bluffing when he was talking about the Dave & Buster's, but he's being serious.
He's been going for 4 years.
There's a Dave & Buster's to the left of the hotel. I still have my card from freshman year, and it's connected to a mall with some Chick-fil-A, about every option you can think of. So it'll be fun to go back to Hoover.
And I bet he saved up all his tickets.
Oh my gosh. I might just have to do a story on that. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you making some time for me.
Thank you.
Yeah.